Welcome to the Wizarding Wireless Network podcast with me, AJ.
And me, Will.
Together, we will be bringing you our no-holds-barred thoughts, opinions, and detailed analysis on all things Wizarding World. So with that in mind, please grab yourself a glass of fire whiskey and settle into this week's episode of the WWN.
Back to the Wizarding Wireless Network with your hosts AJ and Will, streaming to you on all of your favourite podcast providers and on YouTube. With this week's episode, we will be talking about Chapter 6, The Journey from Platform 9 3/4.
And what a journey it was, wouldn't you agree?
It was a fabulous journey. I mean, what better way to travel than by train?
Exactly. However, I think we can safely say that the Golden Trio had a much nicer journey on the Hogwarts Express than you did last week.
Yes, I suppose we can say that quite safely, yeah.
Not a fan?
I wouldn't be doing it in a rush, put it that way. Especially with the weather that we've been having in the UK, it has been absolutely hot.
That's right, hot everywhere. There's sweat, there's stifling. Sun is just burning down everyone. We don't even have air conditioning.
Is that you?
And the thing is, like, in the train, there's this tiny little window that you can open, and there is no air conditioning in that room at all.
I know. I think a big ass aircon hanging out the side of the train window would kind of cut the mystique.
Yeah, I think it might just detract from that overall vibe and look of going back in time.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, talking of going back in time, the time is 1991. It is the 1st of September and we are going to Hogwarts on the Hogwarts Express. So what is your thoughts about this chapter?
It's such a introduction to so many of the characters that you meet and follow through. We are saying goodbye at this point. You're going onto Platform 9 3/4, and from there, you are going to Hogwarts, and this is it. And it really does feel like it.
Yeah, no, that is it. There is a specific part in this chapter, though, that I read, and it was Uncle Vernon had basically dropped Harry off at King's Cross Station and left him with a bit of a chuckle as if to say, this isn't happening, you're making this up. And he's literally just left him in the middle of a London train station and pissed off back to Surrey. Literal child abuse. But obviously he was then proved wrong because we then got the introduction of the lovely Weasley family, Mrs. Weasley, carting all of her lovely children down to Platform 9 3/4, whereupon she discovers little wandering Harry. Now, there was a bit in this chapter, especially when it came to the meeting of Mrs. Weasley. She kept walking about and she specifically said, oh, what platform is it again? Now, this woman has got more children than anyone in the franchise as far as I can remember. And she still can't remember its Platform 9 3/4. How many children are in Hogwarts with her at that moment in time? You've got Fred, you've got George, you've had Charlie, you've had Bill, and you've also got Percy. Ron is now about to start. So she's had 5 children. Her 6th child is about to go to Hogwarts. She herself has been, and her husband, and she still can't remember what platform it is.
I know. Like, how many years has this person been doing this and still not got it right?
I don't know. A tad concerning. However, let's not have that overshadow the meeting of Ron and Harry. Now, that is a golden moment for us. Because, I mean, let's let the gruesome twosome together. That's when they first meet. This friendship is formed. And, you know, Harry does make that choice, shall we say, what path of Wizarding World he wants to go down, whether it be the good path or the bad path. Because you could arguably say from that time, he's formed a lifelong bond with Ron Weasley, and then going forward onto that chapter, we then meet Neville Longbottom and Hermione Granger. But also in that chapter, we not meet, but we get put a name to the blonde boy in Madame Malkins. We meet Draco Malfoy. We meet Vincent Crabbe and Gregory Goyle. And in that chapter, Malfoy specifically says there are some wizarding families who are better than others. You don't want to be associating with the wrong sort. I can help you there. It does make me wonder what would have happened if Harry had shaken Draco Malfoy's hand, because the whole series could have went to a completely different direction. It wouldn't have been as long, I don't think. But lots of things to chew over there.
Yeah, I think actually it is that juxtaposition of seeing both sides of Harry's life being presented in front of him in such a literal way of, these are your friends, you choose right now which path you're going down.
Exactly. It's almost like a Goosebumps book. You know, like turn to page 74 if you want to follow Malfoy, turn to page 63 if you want to follow Ron.
Oh, 100%. It's definitely one of those choose your own adventure books.
Oh, I'd love that. Someone write it, please.
So, I mean, the thing is, at the same time, the introduction to Malfoy is interesting because it still makes you not question, but like, you don't want to be friends with him either. So you're kind of rooting for Harry to be like, no, I don't want to be friends with you. I'll stick with Ron. Yeah,
major red flags in the green covered robes. Red flags.
It's interesting that even within those meetings, it's a very different dynamic. Malfoy is very much the kind of leader within kind of Crabbe and Goyle. Whereas when he's meeting kind of Ron and Hermione and Neville as well, it's more of a kind of social dynamic. Whereas Draco comes across as very much like, I'm going to, like, if you're my friend, you're going to listen to me.
Yeah, it was almost like a business transaction that did not go Draco's way.
Yeah. And it's quite funny to kind of watch or read that kind of unfold of, he hasn't gotten his own way. Probably like with Dudley being the first time where he hasn't gotten his own way.
Mm-hmm.
And now suddenly it's a case of, oh, you don't want to be friends with me, so you are now on my list of people that I've marked out.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, credit to Harry, because I think with his upbringing with Dudley, he was able to spot the red flags a mile off with him. As we've said before, Draco Malfoy is essentially the Wizarding World equivalent of Dudley Dursley. But as I say, credit to Harry, because he was able to say, no, I can see that you're a twat. This ginger freckled boy, he seems pretty decent. He's got nice sandwiches, willing to share them with me and all that. But so far, I'm getting major bad vibes from you, blonde boy.
Actually, it was quite interesting in the fact that Harry was able to stand up to Draco because obviously he's been bullied by Dudley the entire time and hasn't had a kind of voice to be able to stand up for himself. And this is now the first time where he's meeting someone who is very much like Dudley, but then choosing to be brave and stand up to that bully.
Exactly. Bravery.
Breadcrumbs.
Breadcrumbs!
And I think this is the whole thing of like what Sirius goes on about later on is those choices that you make. And actually, it is all those little decisions of being able to stand up for yourself, being able to make the right choices with the people you make friends with. Even at those early stages.
Exactly. But talking of friendships, obviously we know that Ron and Harry's friendship was pretty much cemented in that carriage, in that moment. The same cannot be said for Miss Hermione Jean Granger.
No, that was quite different.
Oh, yeah. That was toxic, to say the least, at the beginning. It was a tad toxic. There was a lot of red flags in that carriage that day. But I am very glad that relationship did persevere. Now, first impressions of Hermione, what were they?
A tad stuck up, a bit arrogant.
Yeah.
But also, I think seeing it from older eyes, I think it's very much that whole thing of knowing where she's come from. She's come from a very muggle family and she's now gone into the wizarding world. She's obviously gone, this is a whole new thing. I'm going to read up about everything because I'm going to go in and I don't want to look like I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So has read up continuously what she needs to be doing and has almost kind of gone overboard with it. And it's now that whole thing of, I need to prove to myself, I need to prove to others that I'm good because I'm a muggle born.
Yeah, exactly. She almost feels like she's got a lot more to prove than the next person.
Yes. And I think seeing her personality like that, reading it in that context, changes how I kind of feel about her first interaction.
Yeah.
But reading it as like a teen and kind of growing up, you do see it as that kind of like arrogance and someone who's coming across a bit of a know-it-all.
Yeah. And we all had people like that in school.
I mean, what was your initial thoughts of Hermione?
I mean, I loved her because I always seen myself as that know-it-all in school. I was insufferable. I hated myself in school looking back. Genuinely. If I had to relate myself to any character, it'd be Percy Weasley, that insufferable twat. That's me.
Enforcing all of the school rules.
Pretty much. And sort of now looking back on that, I can see why I was that twat. And I'm glad I'm not anymore, shall we say. I'm glad I'm certainly not anymore. Anyway, but Hermione was always she was always one of my favourite characters because she did value knowledge a lot. She always did strive to know more, and she did like books, and she was all about books and cleverness. But at her core, she was loyal to her friends, and that was the thing. She would stand up for you. She always had your best interests at heart.
Yeah.
I mean, when you sort of think about it, I mean, when the troll attacked her, Harry and Ron came to try and help her. Hermione said, "Oh, I went looking for the troll. I read about them and thought I could handle it, but I was wrong." She committed the ultimate sin in her book, which was to
admit fault.
Admit fault, and also cast herself in a negative light in the eyes of the teachers.
But actually, what's quite nice about, obviously we will come on to it, but it's nice that it just shows that there's a degree of humility about her.
Exactly. Very humble.
Yeah.
As the series progresses.
Yeah. Obviously, it tones down quite a lot.
Yeah.
We've kind of now got our golden trio forming, albeit kind of it's still in its infancy stages. Everyone's still kind of like Ron and Harry have definitely kind of solidified that kind of we're going to be friends right now.
Yeah, it's like that whole, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory when Veruca Salt and Violet Beauregard meet each other. It's like, let's be friends.
Best friends.
And that's it. Deal done. Sorted. Unbreakable.
Yeah.
Unbreakable.
And the thing is, what better way to make friends than sharing an entire trolley of sweets?
Exactly. You can tell that boy was neglected.
Oh, 100%. But honestly, I swear this is this picking out on just garbage. Like, he doesn't realise that there is an entire feast waiting for him at the other end.
Well, to be fair, it's not as if he got like a syllabus sent out to him. He didn't get like a welcome to Hogwarts brochure.
Student welcome pack.
Exactly. I would love to see that. Someone please design that. Minalima, get on that. Student welcome pack immediately.
I think actually this is a bit of a sign that Harry is also letting go a lot of the whole thing of he's in front of someone new, but actually he's in front of someone that he can kind of relax around because he's suddenly kind of going, right, I'll just have like all of the sweets. I don't care what he thinks of me. This is what I want to do.
Yeah, exactly. And Ron, I suppose, does sort of feel the same because he sort of, when it was like anything from the trolley, no, and he just pulls out the sandwiches. I mean, like, you would think it would be a bit embarrassed about that, but it wasn't. It was just like, I'm fine.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's like Ron's kind of grown up. It's like not obviously to the level of Harry has, but he's grown up poor. Yeah. So actually, for Harry to come along and go like, right, we'll just get all of the sweets. Ron's definitely not going to be turning around going, no, I'm good. You have the entire trolley. Yeah. But it's like Harry feels so comfortable around him that actually it's like there's only two of them in the carriage. He's going to pay for the sweets, and he sees Ron as a friend who has kind of gone through that same childhood of not being able to get what they want, and suddenly has this money, and we're just going to treat ourselves. Exactly. The sweets that we can get from the Wizarding World is in no way a comparison to what the guys actually have available to them in the books. No. I mean, We've had Bertie Bott's flavoured beans quite a few times.
Yeah, I must admit, I really do like them. I mean,
too.
I find it's quite a fun game, especially if you're with people who are a bit unsuspecting and you say, oh, do you like a jelly baby or a jelly bean? And they get like earwax, bogey flavour, vomit. Hilarious. Absolutely hilarious to see their face.
Yeah. And there's definitely flavours where I've had them and I've thought, no, those would be really nice flavours. And they're absolutely disgusting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What's the other one that I absolutely cannot stand? Boiled egg. Yeah, no, cannot be dealing with that. I would not thank you for a boiled egg every flavour bean. I simply would not. However, a chocolate frog, on the other hand, that is a whole other kettle of fish. I love a chocolate frog. I have been known to eat a full one in one sitting because, why not?
That is very impressive, AJ. Because you've got quite a lot of chocolate frogs and chocolate frog cards.
I mean, I think I've only got about 5. I wouldn't go as far as to say I've got a lot. I bought the big tin that you could get with all the 4 founders. You got Godric Gryffindor, Helga Hufflepuff, Rowena Ravenclaw, Salazar Slytherin in one tin. And I can't remember who else that I've got. I've got a few other ones. But I know that there are some collectors out there who, like, if the studio tour or Universal release a new chocolate frog, they need to get it. They need to get the card. Which is totally fair enough. But I think if I was to start that would go down a very, very, very deep rabbit hole, which would lead to financial ruin.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely like once you start, it's a never-ending collection.
Exactly. Gateway drug.
Did you ever collect the chocolate frog cards when Harry Potter and Philosopher's Stone was coming out in cinema? Do you remember you could actually get chocolate frogs from like Tesco's or like supermarkets?
I have a vague recollection, but I never actually seen The Philosopher's Stone in the cinema. The first film I seen was Chamber of Secrets. It's why it's my favourite.
Oh, yeah, I remember you saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still remember. So when I was younger and The Philosopher's Stone had come out in cinema, they did all these promotional sweets, and one of them was chocolate frogs. And you actually got a little collector's card inside, and it was very much like the chocolate frog cards that you played when you were on like the PS version of the film games.
Yeah.
So you'd have like Gregory the Smarmy, like he would be on one, and there would be the like foil cards that you could like change, and it would have like the 2 different pictures.
Yeah. Oh no, that'd be amazing.
So yeah, I collected quite a few of those, and I was desperate to try and get as many as I could, but
I remember the trading cards that you got. For some reason, it was the Prisoner of Azkaban film that I remember you got the trading cards for. And I remember getting packets upon packets and packets and packets of them. And I don't really know if I ever did complete the collection. Probably not, knowing me.
Yeah, a lot of promotional stuff came out for Prisoner of Azkaban compared to like all of the other ones.
I know. To be fair, like all of the old merchandise, and I'm not saying the merch that we get now is bad, right? By no means am I saying that, but I feel like a nostalgic connection to the vintage Harry Potter stuff, like 2001, 2002 kind of stuff. I don't know why there's just something so retro and vintage about it. I don't know why. I just get this overarching sense of happiness whenever I see it because it just reminds me of being 6 and 7 again.
Yeah. I still remember having like the duvet cassettes, everything like Harry Potter.
I had that duvet. I had that little single bed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that was fab.
But you're right. Like literally all of the kind of like older merch, it's just like so nostalgic. So kind of going back to like the whole pigging out on Bertie Bott sweets, you had chocolate frogs. It's just that other element of the Wizarding world like unraveling. It's like even the sweets are magical.
Yeah.
And I did specifically at this point think, okay, at what point does it stop? What point is it not magical? When's like the mundane stuff, or is everything like magical? Because like you've got the chocolate frogs, but they're alive.
See, right, I have questions about that. I mean, I get that it's just a spell, but I'm concerned and I'm confused about that chocolate frog. I mean, if I went to eat that and it started to jump, would you still eat it?
So this is where your ethical dilemma comes out.
Exactly.
Because it's a chocolate frog, but it's also alive.
Is it? I mean, oh.
You couldn't just start with a leg.
No, you could not.
But what do you start with? Do you bite its head off?
God only knows. I mean, Ron said they've only got one good jump in them to begin with anyway, but I'm like, at what point does it stop becoming a chocolate frog that is alive to just a chocolate frog?
See, he says one good jump, but in the films, that frog definitely does two.
Oh, God, yeah. Vertically, I might add, up a window.
And then one out the window.
Exactly. But to be fair, that could have been wind. Please let us know your thoughts on the ethical dilemmas of chocolate frogs. We'd love to hear it.
Well, let's go on to another reptile that makes a lovely appearance, and the person who goes with it. And that is, of course, Neville Longbottom.
And Trevor.
And Trevor the Toad. I feel like he is the only person who has ever come to Hogwarts with a toad.
Talking of which, how come Ron got to bring a rat? Because that was nowhere in the letter.
That was not on the list.
It was not. Anyway, that's another thing. We'll discuss that at a later date. But yeah, I have yet to see any other student bar Neville Longbottom with a toad.
But it's like you said, you can't do anything with it. It's probably the most useless one out of the three.
Well, exactly. I mean, cats, chuck them on the back of the broomstick for that aesthetic look. Owls are cool. They bring you your mail.
Toads, what are they good for? Licking?
If that. With that being said, I don't think I could imagine Neville without Trevor.
No.
But what happened to Trevor? Because he just seemed to vanish.
This is going to be a spin-off. Please, spin-off show, what happened to Trevor?
Justice for Trevor, where is he? Is he out there?
He got lost again and was just never seen again. He was replaced by a Mimbleless Mimbletonia.
I need to Google that. Did Neville and Trevor break up?
They're falling out. I
am shook. Did you know that Trevor was part of the Toad Choir in Prisoner of Azkaban?
Was he really?
I am shook.
That's amazing.
Right. Apparently, at some point, Trevor escaped into the lake. Both the pet and owner felt a sense of relief. So Trevor's in the Great Lake.
There you go. Happy ending.
Happy ending. Happy, happy, happy ending for pet and owner alike.
So that must be why Neville thought a plant would replace Trevor.
Don't really know if I would replace a pet with a plant. Some people do. Some gays do. Saying that, because we live 14 floors up and we are south-facing windows, it is impossible for me to actually keep a house plant without it being burned. I came back from Scotland this week and I thought, what inferno am I going to come into? Surprisingly, only one leaf was burnt.
It is a very hearty plant, yours.
I've got about 10. They just sort of sit there.
Just shriveled up.
Pretty much.
So apart from Neville and Trevor having their frantic escapades across the train, we actually see how Neville's life is kind of panning out in terms of the fact that when you first see Neville, it's actually on platform 9 3/4, and they do try and do a bit of a hint at this with the film, which is quite a nice little nod, I thought, actually.
Yeah. It's very subtle. You wouldn't know unless you were looking for it.
Exactly. It's definitely one of those kind of Easter egg moments within the films that is a subtle nod to the literature.
Yeah.
And it's the fact that Neville's living with his gran rather than with his parents. And obviously at this point, you don't know why that is.
Yeah.
But it's that whole thing that we've kept talking about. And this is the beauty about kind of the books themselves, is the breadcrumbs that go through them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it will take another whole, 4 years for us to actually find out what happened to Neville's mum and dad. And that's a real moment of vulnerability for Neville to be able to share that. But the more and more that you hear about his grandmother throughout the series as well, it just makes me love her even more. And especially, there's a little bit of hers in the Battle of Hogwarts that we kind of tend to touch upon, but it's when she arrives at Hogwarts and she said, "Where's my grandson?" and someone says he's off fighting, and she said, "Well, naturally, as he should be." So it's albeit she loves Neville so much, but she dotes on him in that way that's aggressively protective of him in a way.
100%. It is definitely I think it's very much shown with the fact that Neville really doesn't like his gran, but actually, I think it's the fact that he doesn't like her because he doesn't want to live with her, more than the fact that actually she's not actually a bad person.
No, she's not. I mean, the thing is, very much like Hermione, she's got his best interests at heart.
Absolutely. And I think she's definitely a character that I wish was a bit more... I think Neville's storyline, actually, in general, I wish would have been a bit more prominent throughout the films, because it's just something that we don't see.
Yeah, which is such a shame. I mean, there's a whole undercurrent. If you put it this way, if you had actually just not read the books and watched the movies full stop, you would just think Neville's a bit dim-witted, Neville's a bit gormless, but you don't realise what he's having to put up with. I mean, like, for me, I will never forgive the Order of the Phoenix movie for cutting out the whole St. Mungo's scene. Not so much for not seeing Frank and Alice, but for the return of Gilderoy Lockhart. Would I love to have seen that? But that whole leaving out of Frank and Alice in St. Mungo's and giving Neville the chewing gum wrapper as a Christmas present, I mean, that broke my heart. It completely did. And that should have been conveyed in the movies.
I think, actually, speaking from someone who watched pretty much all of the films first before reading the books, there is if you haven't read the books at all and you've only ever watched the films, there is no hint really as to kind of what happens to Neville. And you do get that sense of Neville's just a bit of like a dim-witted thing, and he's just a bit useless.
Yeah.
And it's almost kind of like out of nowhere, when it comes around to the Deathly Hallows, that he starts standing up and becomes a bit more of a prominent figure, because obviously in the books that has already been building up to it.
Yeah, it just, if you sort of seen that, you would have been a bit like, oh, right. All of a sudden he's went from Order of the Phoenix to avenging his parents to then Battle of Hogwarts and taking an absolute full centre stage role in it.
Exactly. It seems really out of place for his character. So I think he's definitely one of those characters where we will definitely need to divulge into his overall character arc and everything in a separate episode, because he is definitely one of those interesting characters that if you haven't read the books and you've only watched the films, you have only ever got like a very snippet of Neville's character.
Yeah, for sure.
So this chapter is actually quite a long span, and actually when you compare the chapter to the movie, it actually covers quite a lot. It goes from Platform 9 3/4, meeting the Weasleys, the train journey, the boats. There is quite a lot in this chapter.
Yeah, let's talk a bit about the boats. Now, to this day, whenever I read that bit and whenever I see that in the film, when Hagrid is saying first years follow me, those little eyes are sitting in the boats and you go across that black lake and the camera pans up to see Hogwarts for the first time to that beautiful score by John Williams. I get goosebumps and I feel an internal joy at watching that. I absolutely love it. And I think that moment was actually voted the most favourite moment of all the Harry Potter films by the fans. I think it was pre-Deathly Hallows Part 2, but I don't really imagine that anything in that film would have overarched that.
It is so iconic in that scene, and actually it is so beautiful.
It is. It's stunning.
And like you said, the music that goes with it, it is just that kind of welcome to Hogwarts. This is the magic. This is where it's going to happen. It is. And the fact that you are sat in a boat at the lowest point, looking straight up at this gigantic castle, like you can't help but look at it in awe.
You honestly can't. I just love it. I absolutely love that bit. See, when you sort of look at it, that whole castle itself, and I know you feel like this too. Well, saying that, I don't know if you do, but my favourite part of the Warner Brothers studio tour is that room with the diorama of the whole castle in it.
The miniature.
Miniature. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, if that's miniature, then a lot of men will have a complex, put it that way. every time I walk into that room, that is literally just such a happy place. And I would, on my to buy list is the Noble Collection diorama of that castle, because there's so many aspects of that castle from the outside that I really want to look at. I want to study. I want to get to know a lot more, because when you look at that in the films, when you read it in the books, albeit you're seeing a gigantic castle, but that is a gigantic castle full of possibilities, secrets, secret passageways, experiences.
I think it's definitely one of those rooms where I would happily, if I had a lifetime ticket, I would just happily sit and just be in that room for a while.
Yeah. No, it's been so. Do you know the last time I was at that tour was November? I really need to rectify that.
Okay, so overall, then, like, a lot happens within this chapter of the book, and actually, we're starting to see where the book and the movies start kind of diverging and going in very different directions and cutting those little elements out. But
Yeah.
what did you end up thinking about? Like, how do you think that the book and the movie kind of compares? Is there anything that kind of doesn't sit quite right with you?
I mean, not really, if I'm being totally honest with you. The only thing I would say to that effect is, and I know that we're coming up to it very shortly in the next chapter, is just the Sorting Hat song. We didn't get to see the full extent of the Sorting Hat, but I'll talk about that later on. But aside from that, I mean, the whole chapter that, you know, from the journey to Platform 9 3/4, the whole way up to arriving at Hogwarts, I think it was beautifully portrayed on screen. And that's pretty much it, I think. The only thing I think they may have missed out would have been the fact that Percy was a prefect, that he did finally get prefect. And that there was such an emphasis on that, because you don't really get to see how pompous Percy is until the Chamber of Secrets.
Yeah, it kind of gets subtly hinted at with him within the first film, with him kind of like guiding everyone. But actually, you don't really see any of Percy before him being a guide to the dormitory. And even then, to be fair, like in the film, I didn't even really recognize him as a Weasley.
Yeah.
So I definitely agree with you with that point, with the fact that Percy wasn't necessarily portrayed as pompous or celebrated the fact that how happy Molly was that he was a prefect.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I thought his portrayal by Chris Rankin was phenomenal.
Oh, yeah, you definitely wanted to hate him.
Yeah, he was the character of Percy was captured beautifully.
Like you, the magic of this chapter is definitely captured within the film.
Yeah.
That moment going through the barrier onto platform 9 3/4, that panning shot of seeing the train, everyone like coming into focus was, and still is just iconic.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm falling into the trap of like, this film is just so nostalgic, and the fact that it's the very first one, it's the first time we're seeing everything through kind of Harry's eyes, and actually I'm trying not to say that every scene in this film is iconic, but it kind of is.
But it kind of is. Anyway, so to sum that up, chapter was great and portrayal on movie was great as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, they've done a really fantastic job so far. And I think, like I've said, I think this is where we're going to start seeing those divergence happening between what happens in the book, what happens in the film.
Exactly.
So overall, chapter being probably one of my favorites, because actually this is the chapter where we are seeing the Wizarding World finally in action.
Yeah, I mean, you can't not say that it's not one of your favourites, because, I mean, it just so much happened in such a short space of time. It's definitely one of my favourites in the whole book, because you're introduced to so many iconic characters and you really start to get a feel of what the book's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So what are we talking about next week, dearest William?
So next week we are talking about the Hogwarts Express.
Lovely. Creation.
So, yes, we can
Transportation.
use our knowledge of the Harry Potter quiz from the other day.
Yeah.
We can put that in
Still
practice.
Still can't remember who commissioned the Hogwarts Express, but let us know in the comments for next week.
Yes, so we're going to talk about how we got to Hogwarts. We're going to talk about the Hogwarts Express. We're going to talk about how previous students got there prior to the train.
So with that in mind, I have been AJ.
I have been Will. So as always, keep your radios tuned in to the Wizarding Wireless Network. So for now, bye.
Bye-bye.